Welcome back. It is Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and take a look at some custom work that I have done. Now, this one wasn't really as difficult. The only hard part was acquiring all the pieces, and maybe doing the repainting and touch ups was a little bit difficult. But in the end, it did culminate in basically the best McFarlane Superman that I have made. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know originally I made my classic baby blue Superman. Then later on, I finally made my definitive Superman. Now, I am going to hold off on calling this one my ultimate Superman, but he really seems to be the best Superman I've made. Also, being very different from my previous ones that all had plastic capes and sculpted emblems. This one is a big departure from that style. Now, of course, this all started off with the Task Force Superman, and I knew when I bought him what I wanted to use his cape for. Now I have bought already two waves of these figures so that I could build two dark sides. And that means that I have four figures to do with as I please. Now, I originally didn't want to do this whole process, but it just worked out for itself, which sometimes happens. There's a little bit of synchronicity that happens when you're customizing and using parts where things just seem to work out the way they do, and you use different parts to make figures that you want to customize. And hopefully, it all works out in the end. Now, I had been working on my steel custom for almost a year, but I really wanted a cloth wired cape to go with him. Now, since this one doesn't have a red S on the back, I kind of already had the idea that I wanted to use this cape for my steel custom. At the same time, I wanted this head sculpt to use on my regeneration suit custom Superman as well. Another custom that has been a work in progress over time, changed out different head sculpts, repainted him, touch ups. Finally, I have him pretty much the way I want. I think the only thing I'm going to do is repaint the skin tones to match, which was one of the things I did with this best Superman ever. So once I cannibalized the head, the cape, I only had the body left. Now, of course, the Task Force Wave did have that digital cell shading that kept them from being classic versions of our heroes. So, since I had the Superman body left over, and a lot of people have called this the best Superman body that McFarlane has produced, being originally from the Earth 2 Superman, I thought I would go ahead and dip my toes into trying to make the best Superman. Now, at this same time, another thing I wanted to do was bring in the new gold label Superman 1000, which I bought three of. So I had an extra one of him to match up with this body that I had from the Task Force Superman. And I kind of wanted to meld them together because, of course, the gold label Superman has the yellow S on the back. And I prefer that classic Superman head sculpt that the Superman 1000 represents. Now, I didn't know exactly what I was going to get into when I started it, but in the end, we have this best Superman ever. Now, first thing I had to do was remove all of the cell shading from the Task Force body. That was not really a difficult process. And since I had already removed the neck peg and the head, to remove the cape from my steel, it was already bare. Only other thing I had to do was remove the cape from the gold label. Now, heated it up, worked and pried until it finally separated, and I was able to remove the cape with the yellow S on the back. So, ported that into this task force body, put the neck piece back down on the body, and super glued it so that it would be there forever. Now, I did have an issue with the head, and that was that if you just apply the head to the task force neck, it seems really high, so it extends that neck and makes it look a little bit small. Surprisingly, what I ended up doing was, of course, using a shorter peg so that it would drop the head lower on the neck and the shoulders to make it appear larger. And another thing I did was I reshaped it a little bit. I warmed it up and plugged something inside of it and left it there. And what that did was kind of reshape the jaw a little bit and make it a little bit wider and more squared, surprisingly, so that it fit perfectly onto that task force neck. Now, when I was sure that everything fit, I went to work on some of the other details. Now, originally, I added one of the water slide decals, Superman emblems, to that task force body, but it was just too small. It looked really miniature and kind of dumb. So I decided to try and put the shield from Superman 1000, the sculpted out version, onto that chest. Now, while it did look pretty good and you could go that way if you would like, I really wanted a water slide, emblem on there that isn't sculpted out. The reason being that since this body has a lot less sculpt detail, a little bit more of a classic look, I kind of felt like I didn't want to go with that sculpted out, metallic colored original Superman 1000 emblem. So I went ahead and ordered a water slide decal that was larger for a 7-inch figure, and I had to apply it to that task force body. Now, it is a little bit of a hassle to get on there. You have to kind of know what you're doing. I've only done maybe 5 at the most, mostly yellow emblems on the back of the cape, but it is a little bit of a learning process. But finally I was able to get it centered and down and minimal wrinkles. I did get some wrinkles across the chest, but it kind of works because it looks like, when you're stressing out a shirt, and it has those little striation lines in the middle, so that didn't really bother me. So in the end I was perfectly fine with the size and the colors of the emblem, giving them that classic clean Superman look. Now, finally, after all of this was done, I really got into the details. Now, the articulation on the Superman 1000 head to that task force neck was a little bit stiff, especially because of the shortened neck peg. So I had to go ahead and do some modifications. Now, what you do is you get the back of the hair and you trim down a lot of the excess plastic without damaging the face side of the back of the hair. What this allows is for it to get really thin and makes it more pliable and soft, to where when you lean his head back, the hair kind of folds back over the neck, doesn't damage it, doesn't leave any paint streaks, but it allows for better articulation, as well as adding the little notch the back of the neck porthole. That also gives you a little bit more of looking up when you combine all those things together, so you can put your Superman in some pretty awesome flying poses and great poses for figure photography. Now, you want to do all of this before you start doing any painting, because now you have minimal, touching of the figure. You don't want to be smearing paint or having to repaint again. But we are getting closer to the final product. Now, aside from repainting his hair, adding some flat black because that shiny plastic gives it a big glossy look, which I've never been a fan of. You add some flat black, a little bit of light blue, mix it all in there, and it tones down the shine of the hair while still leaving some streaks of gloss. I like to do that because then you really pay attention to the highlights and add a lot of depth to the hair. But one big task lay ahead of me, and of course, that was repainting the skin tones to match, because, of course, the Task Force Superman has a really orange kind of looking skin tone, harkening back to the video game that it is based on. I did want to add some alternate hands as well. And the gold label Superman head had a lot of added paint that I thought was really not needed, like blush and darkness around the eyes. So I wanted to touch all that up with some matte flesh spray color. That way, you give all the hands, the neck, the wrist joints, the face, more of a same tone of skin so that it comes out better when you're taking pictures and you don't have that big separation and shade of different skin tones. So I think I added him some hands because, of course, Superman has to have some flight open hands. I sprayed them up at the same time that I did the wrist joints so that they would dry together, did the fists, did the neck as well to match, and did the face. Now, when you spray the face, you got to tape off the eyes, the eyebrows, all of the hair. But what it did do was soften all of that added rosy tone that McFarlane added to the paint and gave it a cleaner, crisper look that at the same time matched up with the rest of the body parts, like the alternate flight hands, the fists, and the neck. So once I did all of that, now I truly do have one of the best Superman customs that I have made. Of course, you have that awesome head sculpt sitting perfectly on the neck with a little bit wider jaw going down into the neck plug that sits nicely on the shoulders with the cape tie in. Then you have the classic emblem going down into the belt. Now, I did have to repaint the belt as well, but once again, I used yellow Tamiya spray paint, which is easier to use than a brush. With yellow, it's really hard to get it clean. So I taped off the trunks, painted the belt once, let it dry, sprayed it again, and even got the back of it, as I said, where you could see it came out really clean and crisp, taking off all of that cell shading that they had added down into the fist of the hands, which have been painted to match the rest of the skin tones. And of course, you still retain articulation at the shoulder, at the waist. You get them in some cool poses. The legs have the same articulation so that you can do everything you want to do with figure photography, as well as now you can put him in a flight pose, lean him back, and get that head to really slide back up and give you a great flight pose. So, like I said, not hard work, but it was very tedious work and a lot of work in getting all of the parts together, the hands, the emblem, reworking everything so that it worked on this task force body. But in the end, I am very satisfied. Now, of course, the chef's kiss for me was going to be at least one cool accessory. Don't know why McFarlane has not done this. Maybe he will in the future. But I did give him a kryptonite style chain to break out of. And I would prefer this like in a clear crystallized, kryptonite color, but this metallic green works pretty good to do some figure photography and add to your arsenal of accessories to have a lot of fun with this best Superman ever. So, anyways, guys, hope you got some tips out of this. Any questions, put them down below in the underground. But as always, keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.